And welcome, rugby fans, to another episode here with your team from the Rugby Rant podcast show. A quick reminder to our fans, my name is Ty Braga, your host for today's activities, alongside the familiar voice and face of Rob the Hammer Hammerschmidt. And in the absence of Scott, the big guy Ferrara, we bring in another Rooney regular with Mike Perazzini, the grand poobah himself. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thank you guys for having me.
Right. I think this is like
awesome as always, mate.
Or sixth time, like you're becoming a pretty regular fixture here.
Yeah, I think close to fifth or sixth time.
Yeah, I think it is. I think you might be one of the most often on the show. So you got lots to live up to. But we've got.
I'm still waiting for that check. I'm still waiting for that check.
Yeah. So. Royalties are on their way. Royalties are on their way.
Me too. And listen, I'm just jaded because Rooney has kept my guys out of the playoffs in the last 2 years. Nothing personal, Mikey.
Not at all.
Well, it's also fair to be able to introduce our newcomer to the Rugby Rant and our most recent guest ranter. We welcome MJ Spangenburg to the show. MJ, welcome.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. I've been watching a couple of episodes and it's been good to be on here for once.
All right, folks, don't be fooled by the somewhat Australian accent. There's a South African in there somewhere.
Yeah, very deep.
And we know that because he was making biltong in my basement about two winters ago. It was
okay. Now,
pleasure.
Don't get me started on like the biltong debate because that's like a whole nother rant in its own right. And biltong, if you're not familiar, is way better than jerky, and jerky does not compare. Go to hell. So with all that being said, for those of you that are tuning in and might not know what we do here on the Rugby Rant, let me tell you a little bit about it. Well, we are a collective of rugby fans and we focus on being able to share the news from around the pitch. And on that note, we're going to make sure that we share exactly what's going on around the league. So we'll be back in just a moment. And around the pitch, gentlemen, how does it work? Well, I remind our viewers listening and tuning in here to be able to share in a few short words what is newsworthy, what should you as a fan take note of that has transpired over the last couple of weeks in what this may be regarded as a very short preseason ahead of the opening weekend, which happens February 5th for Major League Rugby Season 5 2022 version. So, gentlemen, we're going to pass the ball around the screen. You're going to tell us what fans should be in the know about. And we started off with Rob the Hammer Hammerschmidt.
All right. Thank you very much, Ty. So my Around the Pitch segment is really built into the preseason. It's a little bit of frustration. I just wish I first of all, let me just give it some context. I understand that the league has limitations. Teams are not, they don't have the money that the NFL does, so they can't, pre-script everything built around the preseason, but it would be nice to have a consistent format, right? And if all owners agreed upon what that was, whether it's, hey, Noah and Atlanta did 520s, right? Rooney and Austin went at it. Dallas and Houston kind of had a scrimmage. So those are all different formats ranging from a full-on game to kind of segmented games. And it was really hard to get a sense for what teams are going to do in week one as we approach that. I just wish they would find a process that works and they release rosters and they just make it transparent so all the fans knew what to expect for the preseason.
Right. And we spoke about this last week. And I think between you and Scott, you highlighted the importance of this is kind of standardizing it a little bit.
Yeah.
And yes, we recognize that's a little bit more difficult under the looming COVID, implications. It's still continuing. It's still relevant. And I think that was the reasoning behind why what was supposed to be a scheduled preseason game between the Jackals and the Houston Sabercats ended up being a scrimmage, is that they had that last minute adjustment to be able to, through some players getting possible exposure exposure. But really, it's about the clarity of it. So they need to just be more clear. Is this a preseason match, or is this a scrimmage, or is this just an extended training where fans might have the opportunity to be able to see a little glimpse of what they can expect in the opening exchanges of the season? But certainly, I think that for their own benefit as an organization, as I'm sure you would agree as a fan, Rob, is that you just want to be able to make sure that the players are properly warmed up and have executed their drills properly, had enough game time, had enough field time, so that when they go into those opening days, there isn't unnecessary errors and potentially injuries too, because they haven't had the game time. So, yeah, really relevant.
It's really just about Super Brew picks for me. I want to make sure that I have a pretty good idea what I'm picking.
I completely overthought it, and Rob is like, well, I just wanted to know what team do I pick in the Super Brew contest, because
everything's all about me.
Last season. Didn't you have the worst record out of us as the Rugby Ranters? Oh, sorry, you've gone silent. So let's swing it around the pitch here and hand it over to MJ. What have you got to share with our listeners?
Cheers very much. For me, it was just kind of hitting on off what Rob said. It'd be nice to see the rosters, but also it'd be nice to kind of see highlights of the games or just the broadcast in general. Right. I know it's a bit harder for the just for trial games and stuff like that, but to be able to see the players and see tries being scored and the hits and everything like that, I think that'll just feed into the want to get it back onto the screens and just see a bit more of it, just see a little bit of a glimpse of it all. I think that'd be really nice for any fan, really, just to see how their team's faring in trial runs, see how the players are going, how they're looking, everything like that. So it'd be very nice just to see a couple of games, even if they just put highlights out, just something for us, just to feed us a little bit.
Right. And it is true. And some teams did attempt it. You know, Houston did attempt it. They tried at full production. The quality wasn't great, but we applaud their effort. And I think for most fans would agree, it doesn't have to be a professional production. It doesn't have to be a CBS broadcast for a preseason match, but they want to see something, even if that's a packaged highlights reel that you can show them afterwards, which most teams should have the capabilities of being able to do in-house these days for something like that fans can actually see some of the on-field action and get a better tell of what to expect. And, you know, one of the only teams I can think of that actually this past weekend hosted a full live match and has consistently done it in what is a shortened version of the preseason is the Seattle Seawolves. So, you know, even though they weren't able to showcase it and stream it, or I haven't seen any highlights, which we said is important, they were still receiving fans, and fans are out there following the right protocols and enjoying some live rugby. This past weekend, they participated in a match against the Harpooners, the Hartford Harpooners. That scoreline was 50-0. And they really gave a lot of the young talent an opportunity to be able to shine in those games. Some of the names that scored was Dan Creel, Mike Brown, who would be a familiar favorite to the Rooney fans. We have Taveti Lepeti Asai, Brad Tucker, familiar name, of course, staple there. Ina Futi, Jeremiah Seo, which is his second week in a row scoring as a newbie, and Travis Lawson as well. So a couple of nice names. And this is what Seattle is doing in the difference to other teams, is they're sharing this information. So take note, if you are a Seawolves fan, they're doing a great job of being able to give access to the preseason for fans and sharing what goes on with the results. So kudos to them. Let's hand it over to Mike.
Yeah, I was going to take it a little bit of a different spin. I was going to talk about the National Collegiate Rugby All-Stars. So this past couple weeks in January, the National Collegiate Rugby League had their All-Stars, which is the best players of all around the United States, essentially, playing in different regional teams. And the women had a division and the men had a division. The women ended up having Eastern Penn ended up winning, as well as Texas. And for the men, the New England Independence Red and the Great Lakes. And the New England Independence Red are actually one of the feeder teams for, the Free Jacks. So it's good to see that, good collegiate rugby is out there being played, that we're beginning to, identify where the talent is. And hopefully we see a few of these, young men kind of move into the MLR.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah. I mean, we want to be able to highlight all different levels of the game here. And here on the Rugby Rant, we recognize that these are the formative years for a lot of rugby players, and we want to be able to see as much great competition for them as possible. So thanks for highlighting that. Let's hand it over to Rob to hear what else he has to share.
Yeah, so I would like to just throw hats off to the AGs for their inside the scrum. I don't know if fans know this, but the AGs are actually, this is entirely paid for by the Gilgronis, by the team. And it's something they took on to really heighten the exposure of the team and of the players. For those that haven't seen it, it is broadcast on the Rugby Network 24 hours after it's on Fox Sports, and it's in the hard knock style, which I completely love. It's a perfect way for the MLR to sell the personalities of rugby. Guys like Dominic Akina, guys like Dom Bailey,
Kurt
Morath, Bryce, Bobby Dice, Bryce Campbell, and a lot of those guys. And most importantly, I think it really highlights a guy that I've just really, really taken a shine to, and that's Sam Harris, the coach for the AGs. I mean, just a tremendous man. Everything that he talks about just speaks of the qualities of his leadership style as a coach. So I cannot wait to see what the AGs and Sam Harris do in season 2.
I love that. Last week I spoke about the Inside the Scrum being a really insightful look into the behind the scenes. And for those of you who are not familiar, it's a great way to be able to catch up on the history of last season for the AGs. We had a lot of trials and tribulations. They did leave last season as one of the best teams with a defensive record, although it'll be interesting to see how that changes here. But I love the production value. Is really good. A wonderful way to be able to make sure that fans outside of the circle of MLR can begin to connect with a rugby team like the AGs on a platform that they're familiar with, like Fox Sports. So let's hand it over to MJ. What have you got to share?
So for my second one, I'm kind of bringing it back to the collegiate side of things where I'm currently in. For me, it's the new Sevens tournament that they're bringing in the second week in May, I believe it is. So used to just both tournaments, or just the last couple of years, there's only been one. Has been at the end of May, the start of June. So it's kind of given a little bit of a buffer for the guys playing 15s to get a bit of a break and get into a sevens mindset. But this year, it looks like they've tried to bring it a bit closer. So normally the 15 season ends in one of the first weeks of May. So it'll be pretty interesting to see how those top teams finishing a bit later in their 15th season kind of bring a team together and the trainings that they'd be going through just to compete in that sevens tournament coming up in the middle of May.
Right. It'll be interesting to see if, with less rest, will those legs still be tired, especially moving into sevens, which is certainly the peak physical form for rugby players. I mean, I tell you what, for me, I did not play a lot of sevens. It was usually the toughest version. So physically, fit-wise, I mean. But let's swing it over to Mike Perazzini. What have you got to share as your last bit of Around the Pitch?
This is a new one. This is only 6 hours out. MLR has an official whistle, which I find hysterical. It's something that we need to know about. It's Acme Whistles. They announced that, but this is just something new. This is just another sponsorship, another tie-in. I think this is good for MLR. I think we need to continue with these sponsorships and tie-ins. I think the overall goal is eventually to get some sort of sports betting tie-in. In New York, sports betting just became legal. I've been seeing ads nonstop for Caesar Sportbook and all these other different betting platforms. I think sports betting is going to be the future, and so slowly but surely, I think with all these different sponsorships and tie-ins, we'll eventually get there.
Right. And, you got to look at how sponsorships like CoolBet are working with the Toronto Arrows. So it's certainly finding a little bit more influence over the league. And as more, the league profile grows, the interest with that will grow because it's so connected to mainstream sports in the US. So we'll definitely see it in the very, very near future being a very normal thing, I imagine. I wanted to be able to draw everybody's attention to something that's very recent as well. So Rugby ATL has been in the press for a couple of different reasons. More recently, with the change of the stadium. On the back of that, there was the announcement of the change of ownership as well, and moving over to new coaching staff as well. So there's a lot of changes over there, and there's been a little bit of decentralization of some of the organization. But one thing I want to be able to give them credit to is the way that they've handled a very difficult and delicate scenario where one of their players is involved in some sort of an incident that required one of them to be suspended while an investigation was underway. Having that concluded, they now realize that the player in question was Jeremy Misigalu, talking about the missile, right? And he has now been removed from the organization. And this is a clear message that Rugby ATL looks at the values of their brand, their core philosophies. And if a player does not meet that standard, they are willing to be able to part ways as amicably as possible. And while it was a very difficult scenario, it does have some legal implications and there still are ongoing consequences. It's important to recognize that they have done what they need to as an organization and were transparent in what their decision was with fans. So I want to give them a kudos for the transparency and being able to handle a difficult scenario as delicately as possible. And while, Rugby ATL has still probably got many more changes to come, it's good to know that the values are still most important. So kudos to them. Gentlemen, that is around the pitch. And for you, as the fan, you now know what you pay attention to from the last week, and you can continue to be able to learn more each and every week as we'll have new ranters sharing what they think is important, what you should take note of. So let's head out of this section as we move forward. But before then, we're going to take a moment to be able to hear from one of our sponsors, and we'll be back shortly.
Tighthead Brewing Company is not just Chicago's premier location to watch rugby and enjoy quality ales and lagers, but it is also a great place to enjoy local acts performing live music every Thursday and Saturday nights. Additionally, their Wednesday night trivia nights are something not to be missed. Tighthead is located in Mundelein, Illinois, and is easily accessible for many Chicagoans and is just steps away from the Metro. Owner Bruce Durr and the Tighthead staff are dedicated to ensure your microbrew experience is as tight as their beers. Bruce's love for the rugby extends beyond the origin of his brewery's name. Tighthead is committed to supporting the local rugby community. This includes his support for Lake County RFC and our own Rugby Rant podcast show. Tighthead's tap room is like the familiar rugby clubhouse in which friends and teammates can meet, socialize, and enjoy the wide variety of brews on tap. Regardless of whether your palate enjoys a good IPA or a dark barrel-aged brew, Tighthead can deliver. Hey, Chicago, when you want rugby, Tighthead Brewing Company will satisfy your thirst. Tighthead, it's worth more than a try.
And welcome back, rugby fans. This time, we're going to be talking about our rugby debates. Here on the Rugby Rant podcast show, we've become very popular for our heated debates where we ask the tough questions and our ranters compete against one another for top honors to be crowned the top ranter. The first topic for today is they are given an opportunity to be able to share in 2 minutes what they think is important about it. Well, we're going to be breaking down the Western Conference, who they think is going to stand out, who they think has got the question mark, what team will rise above them all. They're going to tell us the ins and outs when it comes to the Western Conference and their predictions, where it may lie, and who you should be betting on come the end of the season. So, gentlemen, remember, you all have 2 minutes, and we're going to start that in just a moment. And gentlemen, you know the rules. Once again, you have 2 minutes to be able to debate the topic at hand, the Western Conference breakdown. Who should we pay attention to and why? We're going to hand it over to Mike Perazzini to start us off.
Thanks, Ty. So I think that the Western Conference is going to look a lot like the Eastern Conference did of last year. It's going to be a lot closer, a lot more down to the wire. I don't think the Guiltinis are going to run away with it nearly as much as they did last year. I'm not going to say that the Guiltinis aren't going to be dominant because I think they definitely are. They definitely they brought some new pieces in, moved some things around. And so they still have the talent there, but I think everyone else seemed to improve a lot better and a lot more. I think that you can't sleep on Austin this year. I think they definitely coming out. They've got stuff to prove. They're coming out strong, and word is from their scrimmage, whether it was just a scrimmage or what it was this past weekend against Rooney, they played incredibly well. I think Seattle as well is going to move up. They think they've got something to prove as well. That last season they want to make it seem like was a fluke, and they want to come in and they really have been preparing for the hunt this year. I think that San Diego unfortunately is going to struggle a bit. I think they've made some good moves, but I don't know. It seems like everyone else is getting better, and that goes for Houston and Dallas as well. I'm not saying that, they haven't made, the right trades and bringing the right players in. I just think that everyone else has just gotten that much better. And so I think it's going to be a very, very tough conference, but overall, I think it's going to be LA again.
All right. So your best pick is LA. And yeah, I mean, you wouldn't be faulted for saying that. I think many fans might very well agree with you, certainly on the back of their performance last year. But I do like how you mentioned that, in the first half of last season, they seemed to run away with it. But certainly by the second half of the season, teams had adjusted and figured out the game plan of how to be able to slow that ball down and just restrict their opportunity to move it as quickly as they had in the past, which got many of those points on the board. But something that I wanted to be able to highlight, and this giving us a little bit of context, and looking back at 2021, the top three teams that certainly stood out of the crowd for the Western Conference was LA at the top, who obviously finished ultimately first in their conference and also eventually taking the title overall. They ended the season with 12 wins on record and 4 losses. So, and all those losses came in the second half of the season, as we said. So, teams will be looking to be able to use that as a blueprint, I imagine, this season, to be able to at least look for some of the same strengths and weaknesses in the LA program. But what was so amazing is that by the end of the season, they'd finished with a points differential of 240 in the positive, which is amazing to be able to see. But I think we all know that many of those points came early in the season as they happened to be able to put big numbers on teams in the beginning. Then second to them was Utah in second place with 10 wins and 6 losses, points differential of 42 in their favor. And you had mentioned this one as a potential star to be able to watch is the AGs, who came in third with 9 wins and 7 losses, but a points differential of 72. So that gives a little bit of context based on last season. Those top three, all 3 of those names were mentioned by Mike as a potential, but again, recapping, his top pick was still LA. Let's hand it over to MJ.
All right. So I kind of went a similar way in terms of my thinking. I think in terms of last season to this season, LA's just kind of made some of the better moves. I think from what they lost, as you just said before, they had a points differential of over 200. And with that, they lost, I think, 1 or 2 of their backline players, but they brought in so much talent. I know for a fact they brought in Tom Mitchell, who's an ex-English Sevens player. They brought in Will Chambers, Australian NRL player and rugby union player as well. And then some exciting players like DeMonte Noble as well that will fit in pretty nicely in the backline. So for me, I think they've just kind of brought in more players than they lost. And their forward pack was already strong enough in terms of who they have and their assets that they have down there. For me, I think a surprise might be coming from the Houston SaberCats. I think the coaching that they brought in has come in with a lot of experience. And from what 2 of my friends got drafted there, and from the talks, they've been working really hard in this offseason, just trying to bring in the right pieces and trying to see what they can do this year. And I think in terms of last year, when they only won 2 games, I think for them it's probably going to be one of their better years, just coming out from the bottom. They'll definitely be in the top 3, I think, in the conference.
Yeah, and I love that the fact that you highlighted the SaberCats, and the SaberCats have been kind of got a little bit of a, I don't know if the right word is bad rap, but they've built a little bit of a reputation of being continual underperformers because they got the right facility, they got the right coaching now, they got all the right pieces of the puzzle. It's just not quite connected yet. And there are many fans, regardless whether you're a Houston fan or not, that want to kind of see them elevate themselves. And this hopefully would be the season. We were fortunate enough in the earliest days to be able to bring Heineke Meyer onto our show. Of course, it's a former Springboks rugby coach and now the director of rugby at Houston. And he's really brought in a lot of additional talent that will very much so play a different style of rugby. Will that style of rugby be obvious this season, and will it deliver results? We certainly hope to be able to see so, but I think that there's only room for them to go up from where they have been. So that's all good news. I love the fact that you highlighted LA, though, too. One thing that I take away from that there, MJ, is you said that, yeah, sure, They may have lost a couple of players, but they've probably gained more when you actually think about it. So there's definitely a lot of speed. There's definitely a lot of talent. And especially when you talk about somebody like Mitchell, who's got that 7s, now transitioning to 15s, I think it's going to be an interesting dynamic, and the ball's going to be moving just as fast as it had in season 4 of MLR. So great highlights from MJ. Thank you for the contribution. Let's swing it over to Rob Hammerschmidt.
Thank you. So unlike when we talked about the Eastern Conference, where I focused on, the 9-10 combinations at every team and how that was going to gel, because there's some changes there for this particular conference. I think the major question is the difference in style. Do they want to be immediately successful versus developing talent? And we can see, for example, the Dallas Jackals are really focusing on developing talent. We saw that in our conversation with Henry Trinder. Check that out on our Patreon. But then we have the Seattle Seawolves. They have a good core, but are the additions they made enough with guys like Lapetti, who we'll get into and talk about later? Will that be enough to put them over the edge? Isefo, et cetera. The San Diego, grizzled veterans. But will they have the legs at the end of the day? Do they have another season in them? We saw what happened to Rob Shaw. I think Game 7, he was out for the season, couldn't contribute. And then we get into the leaders of the pack. Utah, can the new halfback combination, because Hagen, Schulte, and Baska are out. We're going to see 2 new guys coming in, Caleb McKenna and O'Gara, I believe, or Niall Saunders at 9 as well. So will that happen? Houston, is the South African influence of Heineke Meyer and Poda Human enough to put them over the edge, and all the Safas that they got coming in? Tyler surely thinks so, and probably MJ as well. And finally, we have, Austin and LA. Did they make those great adjustments to already solid squads to fight it out at the very end and be the one to represent the West? I'm going with LA.
All right. So it looks like across the board, your picks are LA for the number 1 seed. And I think there's a big mix in the middle. I think overall there's a degree of optimism from all of us when it comes to the Sabercats. Just a couple of question marks on what style of rugby it may be, because we know that the South African influence, as heavy as it is, might be a little different gameplay to what you might see from other teams, especially across the league. Or maybe not. Maybe I'm way off base. Maybe they're going to embrace every value that it is and try everything that he's always wanted to be able to try throughout his career as a coach, and we'll see something completely different. But ultimately, they have the greatest room to be able to improve out of any of them.
I was just going to add, the one interesting thing about Houston is, think about not only that huge South African mix, but them bringing in Danny Barrett, CeCe Mahoney, Christian Dyer, Maitai Lauda. They already have Pangelina and they have Boyer. So, and then they have those two guys from Manuel Albert and Tinashe Machena coming in from Lindenwood. I mean, it's a really interesting mix.
It is, and that's what's going to be brilliant to be able to see. I do think that you mentioned that name, Nick Boyer, is going to be one of the scrummies to be able to watch this season. I don't think he properly got the opportunity to shine last season because he was a late transfer from LA, then came to Houston. But the moment he did, they were electric. He picked up the pace of the game. So, you mentioned like Baska quite a few times as one of your favorites. I think Boyer's got many of the same qualities to kind of change the momentum of the game very quickly. So I think that's going to be an important element there that I hope to be able to see more of him this coming season. San Diego, I got to think that, I'm on the similar wavelength as you guys. It's names like Ma Nonu, as great as they are, and Robshaw, is there enough of the rest of the team to be able to carry them through? What are they relying on the same old? And what are we going to see that's new from them this season that clearly didn't work for them last season? There's pressure to be able to perform. They are some of the initial great performers of the league. But, I think this is a credit to what Mike had said. Is it a question about that they're just not improving as much, or has everybody else improved far more than they have, and they've just kind of not been able to stay with the times? And in the same vein, I feel very much similar to Seattle. But I like what you said, though, with Seattle, is that at least there's a lot of strength in the youth that they're bringing in. They're trying different combinations, and they're trying different things. Last season, it didn't click. Hopefully, we could see a little bit more from them. Mike, I remember you saying that you think that this is going to be a much tighter conference than it appeared last season. I think I may agree with you, but I think we're still going to see LA from the start at the top. Does anybody disagree with me?
No, and the big question with Austin is, they were a great defensive team last year, but if you watch inside the scrum, that there's a real strong acknowledgement that they didn't have the offense. Will the addition of Marcel Brockie coming in and pairing with his USA Eagle pairing, Bryce Campbell, will that be enough? Will Connor Mooneyham be able to stay in the lineup consistently to score, the tries and really show off what he showed he could do in a few games?
Yeah, and one of the guys that I think that was certainly a standout that I'd like to see a little bit more from is Mason Koch, the hooker replacement, right? And he was one of the younger guys to come to the team. They definitely got talent. They definitely got the speed. They definitely got the ability to score tries. But for whatever reason, it didn't click last season. But still was in their favor with a 72 points differential at the end of last season. And really the difference between them making it into the second and third spot was that one game. And we can't also, you were talking about Utah for a moment. I think what people loved about them last season is that they were almost the comeback kids of the league. How many times did they manage to pull it out the bag at the last minute, digging deep in those last 5 to 10 minutes and pulled off the wins, right, guys?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and that takes a lot of emotional energy. And can they sustain, and do they have that, team mentality that can bring that forward to this season?
Well, and what ended for them is just that in their last match, they just didn't have that extra little bit. So I think if you're a Utah Warriors fan, you would hope to be able to see your team put on points on the board earlier in the game, stretch that gap as much as possible, and really take charge of the game earlier, so they're not having to play the catch-up under pressure in that final 20 minutes, which we know your luck is eventually going to run out. Sure, you make your own luck, but there's only so many times you could do that, right? Until eventually it runs out. MJ, what do you think?
I definitely agree. I have Utah kind of getting to the middle of the pack this year. I also have Austin making a good run for it at the end, just because of, as Rob said, the partnership and the combinations might be really good for them, on top of a really good defense that they showed throughout the last season. Throughout all the teams, I think it was mentioned before that the Legion didn't seem to make as many moves as many of the other teams. As you saw, the Sabercats and LA, all of them brought in some serious players. I just didn't hear any of the same from the teams like the Legion. So I'm not 100% sure how they will go. But overall, I do think it'll be a lot tighter from the first to the last place than it was last year. I mean, the difference last time was about 8 games difference from the top to the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and that's a very fair point. And, and if it mimics what the Eastern Conference had done last season, it would be a really exciting conference, and it should be. But, it's going to remain to be seen. But right now, as a recap, almost everybody, I think everybody here agreed that LA will most likely still end up on top. It's very much a conversation between AGs and Utah and possibly, Utah. It seems like to me Utah and the Warriors. Sorry, Utah Warriors and AGs would be the better pick for that playoff opportunity as well. So in that case, it might follow a very similar pattern to last season. It's the outliers of San Diego, Seattle, and Sabercats that might mix it up a little bit and make it more competitive. So I guess ultimately we're hoping to be able to see an improvement from those 3 teams to make the conference as a whole more competitive. So with all that said, being said, gentlemen, that is the end of our first rant. And as is customary, we take a break before we come back. And if you want to be able to enjoy our next rant, you can get that exclusive content by following us on patreon.com, our new home for our exclusive content that is not seen already on TRN or our social media. But of course, you can continue to enjoy us with this format on those platforms. So if you're looking to be able to get a little bit more extended interviews on our Run, Pass, or Kick interviews, additional rants, and more news, follow us on Patreon for only as little as $3, less than a beer. You can help us continue to do what we love each and every week and sharing the game we love together on patreon.com. Find us under the handle Rugby Rant Pod. Your donation is appreciated. We'll be back in just a moment. Fans, of course, to that familiar piece, the run, pass, or kick interviews with your team here from the Rugby Rant podcast show. As a reminder, my name is Ty Braga, your host for today's activities, alongside the familiar face and voice of my colleague, Rob the Hammer Hammerschmidt. But more importantly, we need to be able to introduce the man of the hour. That is, of course, the recent signing. Joining us on this side of the pond, all the way from the UK, we have Henry Trinder. Henry, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me. Good to meet you and looking forward to it.
Well, it's us that are looking forward to it because we get to put you to what we like to call the RPK test. Otherwise, as fans may know it as the run, pass, or kick interviews. But before I dive into it, it's best you learn how it works if you've never seen it before. So let me throw it over to Rob Hammerschmidt.
Thank you very much, Ty. And again, welcome, Henry. It's wonderful to have you on. I've been excited ever since I started doing a little research. And hopefully it won't get too messy on you, but we're going to have a lot of fun, I think. For those fans who are just joining us who have never seen a run, pass, or kick interview, it works like this. We're going to pose some questions to Henry, and we'll prompt all those questions with run, pass, or kick. And just like any good back, and we know he is deft with a foot and deft with his hands and can put a shimmy on every once in a while, he has three options. He can run with a question, which is to say that he's going to go ahead and answer it. He can pass a question, which is going to suggest that a little too hot to handle, would rather dish that off. Or he can have a little fun with us, put us on the back foot, put us on the defensive, and he can kick a question. He'll let us know what he's going to do. And if he kicks the question, we'll assume that whomever asked the question will field his response. Or he can direct his kick either way, again, to have a little fun and tell one of us, Ty or myself, who he wants to answer. And what we'll do is we'll answer in a way that we think Henry would answer. And he can grade us out after our answer is complete, say we're complete rubbish, say we're spot on. It's totally and completely up to him, and he can even follow up if he likes to. So
can I add to that? You have to do it in English accent as well, please.
All right, what the hell? It's all fun and games here. Exactly. Nobody's going to get hit. All right. Mine will probably slip into the Australian accent every once in a while. Ty's probably a bit more adept. He spent 10 years on a cruise ship, so he's pretty good at the accents. So, Henry, I got to ask you then, are you ready for the run, pass, or kick challenge?
Ready to go. Yes, let's go.
All right. So here we go. First question. We're going to have a little fun with this one. Again, I'm known for being a bit of a social media whore, and I dive deep into our guests, backgrounds on social media. Run, pass, or kick. You are married to an American model, Ryan Murphy. I think I pronounced her first name correct, right? Ryan Murphy.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Run, pass, or kick, and weigh your response carefully, mate. Weigh it carefully. Did you outkick your coverage?
Did I outkick my coverage?
Did you? Are you familiar with that phrase, by the way?
No, but I know what you mean. I think is it called like punching above your weight? Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Obviously, I'm going to run with this, and I'm going to say, of course, I outpunched my weight. I'm a very lucky person, obviously, and we'll cherish every single day together. So that's the correct response, I'm saying, to that. So, yeah, for sure, which is completely true.
And let me just say, fans, if you haven't done a deep dive into Henry's social media, go ahead and I welcome you to do it. There is a video in which it was during an injury. We'll talk about that later. or maybe it was just during COVID, to keep his skills sharp, she's actually willingly allowing him to practice 100 passes with the left hand and 100 passes with the right hand.
Yeah.
I got to say, mate, you definitely hit a home run on this one.
She was about 7 months pregnant as well, so I had to make sure that
just
my
to add
aim
extra stakes to it.
Perfect. It was definitely a head height passing game, just to make sure I didn't hit anything too precious. So we got away with it too. So yeah, probably not the safest thing to do.
Well, it's offered a great story there, and we're going to stay on this train just for a moment, and now I have the opportunity to deliver the next question to you, my friend. So run, pass, or kick, here is your question. You and Ryan have a daughter. The three of you now have the chance to experience life in America, now having recently been signed as a Dallas Jackal for their inaugural season. So how much did the opportunity weigh into your decision to live in the US and play rugby here? How much of that was weight on the fact of coming to America?
I can run this as well. I'll run this one. It would have been very interesting to see how you guys would have answered that. That would have been very interesting. But it was obviously it made it easier, really, to be honest. I mean, the MRL taking off. Talking to a couple of guys that have been in the league for a few years, you got Rob Shaw, Ben Foding, and people like that. Just touching base with those to see how it's going. Everyone's super excited about it. And for me, being in the Premiership for almost a decade and a half, it was a nice chance for me to go and experience rugby somewhere else. Right. I had a short spell in France. Right at the end of my sort of career in Europe before coming here, and I loved that. Really enjoyed just getting in a different environment. And sort of when I spoke to Elaine, who's obviously the GM here, she had great ideas for how she wanted to use the club, grow the game in the area. And I mean, Texas is a pretty cool place so far. So it was a rugby easy decision. And obviously having Ryan, my wife, who's American, and our little daughter Riley, who's got dual citizenship, they were actually easier to get here than I was to get here through the visa thing. So they were pretty much on the plane before I was. So I mean, my wife's originally from Chicago, so she's happy to be a bit closer to home.
Rob loves to hear that. He's from Chicago.
Yeah, Chicago. There we go. The windy city. Yeah, it has nothing to do with the weather.
Come up this way, give me a shout.
For sure.
I'll buy you a pint. Or two or three or
there we go, yeah. A Bud Light, as everyone seems to like here. But yeah, so it was quite an easy decision, to be fair. It's a lovely place to come and live, heard some good places. It's supposed to be really sunny. We've had a little bit of both. It's supposed to be snowing this week. I didn't think it snowed in Texas, so that's a bit of a spanner in the works.
Trust, they told me that this was a nice warm place until I arrived.
It literally has been I think it's been a couple of very, very cold mornings. But
brought the English weather with you then, did you?
Yeah, I did. But they are saying to cherish them. They said in sort of like the April, May time when it went really spiked, we'll be wanting a bit of cold weather back. So it's been a great experience so far for sure.
Well, I wanted to take the opportunity as well, because I hadn't done it just yet. For those fans that are tuning in and you're wondering, okay, Henry Trinder joining the Dallas Jackals, but what's his story? Okay, so let's run through a few of the points of the resume here. So originally from Swindon in England, participated in the Premiership, as you said, for near on 10 years, or just over 10 years, I think, right? Predominantly, of course, Gloucester team. You recently spent time in France as a medical joker from last season, correct? The 20 to 2021 season. And that was the Division 2 side. I might be pronouncing correctly. Is it Vans or Vens?
Van.
Not even close. All right. Definitely pronounced it incorrectly. But now you find yourself here. And what the fans have found very interesting, and this is kind of now progressively becoming a more interesting trend, is that you are signed until the 2023 season, correct? With the Dallas Jackals.
Yes.
And the great news about this is that a lot of players have come from overseas and they've tried one season, and now you're seeing a player who's going to be dedicating for two, who knows, hopefully even more. But you started as early with your great success at the under 18 level, and of course the under 20s, national colors, national honors, whatever you want to call it, for England. So this has been a part of your life for a very, very long time. So we were very happy to be able to have it. And I just wanted to highlight some of those points in your resume that fans who are tuning in know what we're talking about is a seasoned veteran of the sport.
Definitely a veteran, getting old now.
The bruises last a little longer, the knocks feel a little harder.
Yeah.
We have to wait until Henry starts developing the salt and pepper hair before we actually call him seasoned. Like myself, I'm well seasoned. Ty just spoke about your 2-year contract, about coming here. And you mentioned and talked a little bit about developing rugby. I want to delve into that for just a moment with this next question. Run, pass, or kick, on several occasions, you have spoken publicly about your desire to build and grow something in Dallas as a motivating factor for your coming to the United States to ply your trade. Run, pass, or kick, does this mean you plan on putting down some roots in the United States? He's looking at his wife right now for direction.
What do I say, honey? I'd be interested to see how you are. I'm going to kick this one, and I'll go to you, Rob.
Oh, wonderful!
With that English, yeah, there we are, with the English accent, and I'll critique you if it's right or wrong.
What, the accent?
I have to get the accent right and the actual answer right. This is one.
All right, you've added an extra layer to this.
It's like when somebody punts that chips the ball overhead, you got to chase it back with an angry ma'a nonu on your tail. Jeez.
I don't know what he's struggling with most. The response?
I don't know what to tell you. I really think that you plan on putting down some roots for about 2 years here. You're going to see how it goes, if you like it, and if your in-laws really appreciate you and really grow to love you down deep and want to have your family here in the United States for a much longer time. I think you're going to develop into a fine coach, as you've already done some coaching with the Dallas Jackals thus far.
That's not bad at all. I'll give you that. But not bad.
Not bad at all.
10 points for the effort.
On behalf of the Rugby Rant show, I'd like to apologize to every British person.
That was very good. We'll give you
what do you think about that?
I want to hear how he grades me out. Go ahead, Henry.
Yeah.
I'll give you a strong 7 out of 10 for the accent, and I'll give you a 6, 7 out of 10 for the answer. It was I was more focused on the accent than I was actually the answer, so I was a bit muddled. But yeah,
me too, by the way.
We all were.
Yeah, I mean that was like part of the reason to come here. Like there's not many times I think ever in sport where you get sort of an opportunity, especially in my age and my career, to start something fresh. You go to a club and it already has its principles, its beliefs, etc. History. Where here there really isn't that history with it, and it was a great, obviously talking to Elaine, who all my comms were through when we were obviously doing the process of deciding, and it just the picture that she painted. The values that they wanted to keep to, as well as adding on the lovely weather. I've been in England all my life. It rains a lot. It gets boring. And wanting that experience, obviously the family side, being closer, that was an appeal as well. So I think when I sort of like decided on for me, the rugby was the easy bit, and it was a decision then to go this way and go to Texas. And I think, it's worked out so far. Like, loved it. Everything that we wanted it to be, it is. And that's sort of the same as a couple of the other international guys as well, who have sort of come. Chris Pennell probably won't want me talking on his behalf, but just an opportunity to really be a big part of something from the beginning, and really I think I mean quote myself, pave the way for layering in those foundations. Really trying to give as much as we can, so the Jackals in a couple of years' times, when the boots are hung up, are set hopefully, and sort of ready to go season from season, and go sort of level by level. I mean, don't get me wrong, we've had I've been here for 2 weeks now, 3 weeks obviously when the visas were sorted, and there's so much to cover in such a short space of time, so we'll be growing the whole time, and I think that's one of the exciting bit, is that we'll get better week by week, and also it's the potential we already have in this group that very honestly I didn't really know a lot of the guys at all. So to come and really be like, wow, we've actually got some really good players, a real strong squad. There's no assholes or anything. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. I mean, there's no like characters that are sort of like don't fit in. Like, I think the recruitment's been fantastic in that sense that everyone's here with the same ideas of wanting to grow, wanting to be good, wanting to get better every day, and then hopefully start winning games and then go higher. So super exciting. I mean, it's the beginning. So much to do right now. We're super rushed, but it's been super cool so far. The process, the learnings, and as you said, the coaching element that I hopefully will sort of fall into somewhere, if not here, would be is really exciting process, really, of playing, coaching alongside, and then sort of layering and learning from the coaching staff we have now. So, yeah, I probably ranted on a lot there, but I think it's in terms of ticking all my boxes, it is exactly that.
Well, ranting is kind of what we do on the Rugby Rant, so we'll let you run a little bit longer with that one.
For sure.
But it's all good stuff, and I'm actually going to piggyback on some of that though, because the words that you had used there is, and actually it perfectly lines up with our next question here. So let me just jump right into that. So Run Passer Kid, you were quoted as saying just a moment ago, Elaine, as in Elaine Vassi, talk about her vision of the club and how they want to play as a brand. And you spoke a little bit about the culture that's starting to form, how impressed you were with some of these aspects already and the quality of the squad. So here lies the question. This was a part of, obviously, of your reasoning for joining the Jackals. What is that vision, and what is the brand of rugby that the Jackals fans can expect from the organization when they hit the field in 2022?
Run. I mean, we've all come here to play an exciting brand of rugby, and everyone's on board with that. And the recruitment we've got some very, very good guys in very good positions. Some very exciting young wingers that we've got. And also some big boys up front that can really run with the ball, really get us on the front foot and going forward. And hopefully, well, we have got the sprinkles of old people to hopefully build and lift that all together. So super exciting. We want to offload. We want to score tries to win, and ultimately that will grow. But I mean, I think for me, when I was talking to Elaine about it, how I envision the club is just to play rugby with no shackles. Sometimes we're going to have to kick. Sometimes we can run, but it's not a case of we're just going to run up our own arse the whole time. We're going to play sensible rugby, but always to score tries from anywhere. And for me, as a player of sort of how I've played my career, that's perfect. I want to attack. I'm attack mindset. I always want to back sort of my ability, the abilities of others around me, instead of having this right. And it can be very, and not all teams do it, it can be very English. I've been in squads where it's like, right, we're kicking everything up to the halfway line or the 10, or we're playing two phases. If we don't go anywhere, we're kicking it. And it's almost
I'm South African. You don't have to tell me about that strategy.
Well, there we go. There we go. So like that philosophy is getting the ball, having one punch play, bang, 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 bang. Till someone makes a mistake, we'll kick points where we want to be free flowing. We want to have that courageous side to
right,
it,
which
really
quote unquote is like what most people recognize as the running rugby, right? And it is an exciting brand of rugby because with it comes a certain degree of unpredictability, which makes the sport exciting. I mean, the one thing about sport in general, why I think people still are so entertained by it across the globe, is that it is truly the only reality TV left, right? Because it's unscripted. And anything can happen. And that's what makes it beautiful. And thank you for sharing this, but it sounds like Dallas Jackal fans can be excited for what's to come. I mean, it looks like there's going to be a focus on speed and recycling the ball as quickly as possible and creating as many opportunities. So it's not going to be bogged down and slow the game down type strategies from what I'm hearing in between the lines. Yeah,
for sure. We want to be almost like every time we want to be loaded to go, whether we have to slow it down, or where we get real quick ball, we always want that option to be able to do everything. We're obviously very fresh in installing a framework that allows us to do that. Everyone's getting to know each other. A couple of the guys are really, really sort of like raw and early in their rugby career, coming from other sports. So there's a lot to cover in a short space, and as I said, we will get better every week. But we definitely, from the off, everyone's on the same page, that we're not going to be scared to really run with the ball. And ultimately, we want to be a team that has the ball. We don't want to be one of these teams that kicks and waits for mistakes to happen. We want to have the ball as much as possible and then dictate what goes from there.
I think predominantly that philosophy fits well within the MLR. I don't know how much of the MLR you watched prior to coming over or having conversations with Elaine, but by and large, that typifies the league. It's the exciting brand, quick ball, fast pace, always looking to score, not worried to take chances to advance your team's position on the pitch and score tries. So that sounds exciting. I know our good friend Rick Collins down there. If you don't know Rick, you'll get to know him soon. Rick Collins will be really, really excited.
He runs the Dallas Jackal Supporters Club. At least he's one of the big contributors.
Okay, cool.
He's a good mate. One of the things I wanted to touch base on here before we start to transition to the next phase of an interview was you talked about the fact that, you've got a lot of young guys and you're one of those savvy vets that's obviously has a great resume, spent a ton of time in the Prem, has certainly learned and honed your craft, but the side of perhaps sport that some people forget about is the injury component. We know, as I was doing some research, that you've had some injuries over the course of your career, and hamstring injury, shoulder injury, ACL, and it's limited your career in the Prem a bit. I think it's important for young athletes who are perhaps watching and listening to kind of get a perspective here. So run, pass, or kick, mentally injuries can really wear on the resolve of any athlete. How did you maintain your focus to overcome these injuries and return to play?
Run. I think it's hard. I mean, you get your small injuries and then you get your big injuries, and sometimes those small injuries, if they are one after the other, can actually be worse than the longer ones. And it's, I mean, hey, you were nice. You only sort of mentioned about 25%, even 20% of the injuries I've actually had. Yeah, I mean, I've had both the long ones, ruptured my Achilles, done 2 ACLs, fractured shoulder, fractured jaw, and then I've had the hamstrings, the little tweaks, the AC joint bruises, all the fun stuff. But hey, I think, well, now I'm probably not built to play rugby, looking back at everything now. But apart from that, I think the thing that's always brought me back is I've been very, very lucky to have a close group of friends and actually be involved in good squads where you're training on your own, you're doing all your rehab in the morning, but then when the bulk of the guys come in, you're treated exactly the same, you're involved exactly the same. And I've grown some very, very, very good friends over the years that I can wholeheartedly say have helped me through each one. My family always been very supportive. My wife doing all the horrible things when your leg up on the sofa and you can't move around, and she needs to do everything, feed you, give you coffee, change the wee pots and empty them. So it's
regress into little children.
yeah, honestly, I've had some horrible ones, which you are, and you literally have to. You're on there, sort of like you're begging on their win in terms of, as long as they'll help you. But it's definitely the support around me that's allowed me to really just concentrate and focus on getting back. And I'm sort of one of those. The finer details of recovery is for me is just burying yourself into it, and you have to go up 100% into it, otherwise you'll come back not where you are. And
right, professional athletes talk about this so often, that it's just as much mental as it is physical, repair of the mind, body, and soul. It's frustrating sometimes, as you said. If you got one small injury after another, and it just sidelines you with stuff like that. But it happens a lot. So a variety of different reasons, but a lot of it is your attitude. And it sounds like through that all, you've had good people to be able to lift your spirits, and that helps a lot.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's probably is literally the main thing. Like, all those guys around me have helped me. The clubs I've been at have always supported me. And luckily, I've bounced back and be able to reach a peak that I was at, or surpass the peak I was at, which obviously helped. But I think a group around you will always help you more than you trying to do it on your own. And I've never been shy I've never been shy of knowing that and accepting that. And obviously I've been very, very lucky to be in a position where I've got people around me that have got my back or can pick me up, etc.
Well, that is a good story and great to hear. And on that note, one of the supporting factors that have our back week after week is certainly the Tight Head Brewing and the team out in Mundelein, Illinois that support them. So we're going to take a few moments away from our interview here on the Run Past the interview with interview? What the hell am I saying? That one came out wrong. Let me try that again. Hold on. A little bit. Okay. We're going to break there. So, okay. And on that note, talking about support, we're going to take a few moments to be able to share who supports us as we swing it out to Rob Hammerschmidt. We'll be back in just a moment with Henry Trinder.